I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the 11th generation 2022 Honda Civic. For Australia in 2022, the Civic will be coming here with just one model, which is this hatchback here. Only in a hatch and only made in Japan. This car is called the VTi LX, although if you look at it, it kind of looks more like the RS of the previous model, but they call it VTi LX because it is the most well-equipped new Civic Australia could get. So the one aspect of that though that has been a bit of a talking point is the price of this car, which is $47,200 drive away, which is fairly expensive. It's about $700 more than the absolute top spec Mazda 3 X20 Astina Skyactiv X engine thing, compared to a Mark 8 Golf, like an R-Line 110 TSI with a Vision package and with a sunroof. That car drive away is about high 45s, so that's still $1,500 dearer than that Golf. Although, if you compare the Honda against a couple of the other German premium cars, the new gen Audi A3 starts at $46,300 without on-road costs. The 118i BMW is sort of somewhere in the high 47s, and the Mercedes A-Class is about the same. And none of these cars have had any options added, whereas this Honda has no options. It's $47,200 drive away. So, one other little stat that is probably worth thinking about is that in late 1991, when Honda launched the 5th generation Civic in Australia, the top spec SI cost $26,240. And if you convert that to coinage today, that's about $51,000. Whereas if this wasn't drive away, it'd be somewhere around 43. So maybe that sticker shock isn't as horrendous as it may seem. But there's a lot to this car, so bear with me because I feel like it does go some way towards justifying why it costs that amount. Now, the 11th generation Civic isn't an all-new car because the previous 10th generation car was already on an all-new platform, which is the Earth Dreams platform, which is what Honda calls it. So this is a development of that, but a significant development of that. And as we shall discover when we drive it, it feels a lot more sophisticated than the car that this car replaces. At the front here, it does look quite similar to the 10th generation Civic, but the more that you look at it, the more you realize it's really quite different. These headlights here are all LED. At night time, they look really good because they've kind of got this globe and this globe lit up, so it looks like it's got quad headlamps. The blinkers run through this sort of angled bit here, which is the DRL, which does give it quite a tough look. I should also point out that this bonnet, which is a little pedestrian bonnet that pops up if you happen to run into a person, which you hope you never need to use, is nice and flat. This is trying to revive a look and a sort of an engineering tradition that Honda used to be famous for, and that was low bonnet line, low cowl, which is this bit here, and fabulous vision. And this Civic, considering that it's a modern car that has to meet all those safety standards, does go quite some way towards achieving that. Among the little cool things about this Civic is that it has the windscreen washers and the wipers, which is kind of a nice way that they sweep when you use those. The mirrors here are now mounted in the doors, so you've got a bit of extra vision here instead of this big thing hanging off the side here. This VTi LX version has these 18-inch wheels as standard, which are Bellina black with this kind of polished face front that's sort of done in a grey. They look really good. They have 235/40/18 Goodyear tyres on them, so this is actually probably best seen as a warm hatch rather than just a top luxe spec. As we move around the new Civic, it's clear that this has been about sort of decluttering that sort of messy look of the previous model and the one before that and the one before that. So finally we have a little bit of svelte elegance going on in a Honda Civic. The belt line along the side here runs constant all the way along to keep this window line nice and low. It doesn't have that kick up that the old model has. It also has an extra window here to just kind of give this sleek look and a little bit more vision. Along the roof here, instead of having big lumps in the roof that ran into the tailgate and an ugly spoiler, this car is just smooth. It has the rear hatch hinges built into this smooth little bit here. It doesn't have any seams in the roof either. The laser cut seams through here are actually hidden. So all these little details kind of go towards making this look classier and justifying that price. The new Civic has also changed a little bit in proportion compared to the car it replaces. It has a 35mm longer wheelbase, it has 12mm more rear track, so the rear wheel sits out further to the body, and it's also closer to the back end. It just gives this nice squat stance at the back of the car. As we come around to the boot here, we no longer have an ugly spoiler, we just have this lovely cleanliness, a little lip spoiler built in here, just the single rear wiper, and that's it. And I think that it actually gives the new Civic sort of a look that does say Honda Civic, but also it brings a newfound level of class to this car that it really hasn't had for a long time. Like, this is trying to be inspired by the 4th generation Civic and the 3rd generation Civic, and they're from 83 to 91, I think, so it's a long time ago. But thankfully, there's a flavour that's come back. And in here we have 404 litres of boot space, which is really impressive for the class. Although it doesn't have a spare wheel in the floor, it only has goo to go in the tyres if you get a flat tyre. So underneath the 404 litres, we have another 45 litres here. You can stand that up like there to separate a bit of the luggage. So there's a lot of utility in the new Civic, although you probably wouldn't want to drive it somewhere where you have the potential to get a flat tyre. It also has this cool little function, and this is coming from a brand that has done some really flimsy, not so good luggage covers. This one looks flimsy, but it has a little handle here and slides away like this. And just a little pieces of attention to detail like that, I think, continue to go some way towards justifying how much this car costs. The new Civic's premium story continues inside, as well as the fact that it's also mining design details from the Mark III and Mark IV Civic in here as well. Now, the thing that I like most about the interior here is that the dashboard is sort of like a reimagined version of the way you would lay out a dashboard in the 80s, meaning that it's just simple, it's horizontal and flat, and it doesn't have any of that fussy layering and digital rubbish that kind of spoiled the last few generations of this car. This is about being premium and classy, thank God. The dashboard here is not the squishiest, but it is beautifully made. It really does look expensive, and the way that it flows into the doors in terms of matching its finish says that this car is really well built, and it is. It sort of sits flat and then goes up and has a little lip under the front screen, and while that cowl is not as low as it is in, say, a 1983 Civic, it's still impressively low for a modern car, and you can see the bonnet, which is a big beef by a lot of people about modern cars. You can't see the front, and it doesn't have front parking sensors, so it's probably good that you have some kind of sense of what's going on there. This screen here is also Honda's largest screen ever at 9 inches, and while that may not be as large as some of the others, it does work really well. It has this little lip on the front here, so Honda says you can rest your thumb or rest your hand on it while you push the buttons, which is a really good idea. It has a physical and lovely volume knob here. The switches on the side are just sort of jump ones like home and back to go to the main screens. The speed of this system is really good. It also has quite nice graphics, even when it's the Honda graphics, and that's something new. But the Apple CarPlay is wireless, the Android Auto isn't, but it has this kind of slick tech feel that's further enhanced by the fact that it has a 12-speaker stereo. So it's a Bose system, it has 11 speakers and a 12-channel amplifier and a subwoofer, and it sounds really strong. Even old music sounds crisp and really well staged in this cabin. So that, again, does go some way towards justifying the cost of this car. The piece de resistance, though, for the design here, I think, is this honeycomb mesh that runs all the way across the dash. It hides where the air vents are. On the outside, you can turn them off by a little barrel dial at the bottom. Here in the middle ones, you can't, but they do have this little click when you get to the middle of the vent, which is kind of cute, even though I don't know anyone that's going to be that pedantic about having them all pointed straight. Really love the fact that this Civic, though, has completely exposed HVAC vents, unlike the current new Golf, where they all black out when the car's turned off, and when you turn them on, all the lighting comes up from the back. All of these switches feel really, really good. It just works really well. Again, simply laid out, and simplicity wins here. Got the seat heaters on both sides. We've got 2 USB ports directly underneath with a 12-volt outlet here, and we have a wireless phone charger here that is designed for every size of phone. So even the biggest Android phone can still fit in this wireless pad, which you can also turn on and off. Honda says that they've done this sort of ribbed kind of trim around here because it's meant to be scratch resistant, which it really seems like it is. Same on the doors, and it isn't piano black, which is meant to get fingerprints and stuff and scratches easily. And I can already see a few fingerprints on here, but the piano black does look really good around here. On the side though, when there's a lot of sun coming through, it does reflect this into the side mirror. So you kind of think that there's a car coming up behind you with lights or something like that, and it's actually not, it's the dashboard in the Civic itself. The instrument pack in front, the right dial is analog and is fixed, but the left dial is digital and can be scrolled through a bunch of things through this little home button here and this little barrel dial here. But it sort of mimics the look of the other side, and they actually really are quite clean. Not a whole lot of stuff going on here. This is not a virtual cockpit design, but it does work really well, and again maintains that level of class in the Civic. Down here we have the gear selector with the red stitching, which matches the synthetic leather, not real leather, on the seats around here. The centers here are micro suede with these little red accents in the middle of them, which are really comfortable. Honda says that the seats aren't leather like the car that it replaces, but it does have this suede in the middle, and these seats are really quite comfortable given the fact that they don't really have that much adjustment. This seat here is now electric, but it only has four-way adjustment, which is like the sort of adjustment you would have had in like a late 60s luxury car, but it does work here because the bolstering is pretty good. The driver gets 8-way, but they don't get lumbar adjustment. However, the seat is strong enough to still be comfortable. In terms of storage, the Civic doors are not great. They don't actually fit, say, something like this in it, which is a 1 litre camping bottle. You can when the door is open, but when you close the door, it hits the edge of the dash. Where this does fit, though, is in these cup holders here. And that's actually kind of doable because it's sort of away from the gear lever and away from the driver's arm. I do also like this little feature here where they say that if it's a short driver in the driver's seat and you need to open the thing in the middle, you can pop that and it automatically lifts itself up to reveal this little tray with a little rubberized mat on the bottom, another little tray here. It's all really nicely made. It feels sort of like a Honda, as you'd expect, and it just works really well. And finally, to the steering wheel. This wheel is just really nice to hold, has the same red stitching as everything in the car, and just gives a classy look about it. Again, regular buttons instead of capacitive things. It's not trying too hard to be too techy. It is just sort of simple and usable. Ditto the little ambient lighting in the doors, just one little red strip, just enough to give this interior just a little bit of luxury sparkle. Unlike the front, in the back, you can actually get this bottle kind of wedged in the door there. So it's not meant to really go in there. It's probably meant to be a smaller bottle than a 1 litre metal bottle, but it does fit. So there is one good thing about being in here. As for the doors themselves, the top here is hard. It's not like the sort of squishy top in the front, which I suppose is a little bit disappointing, but generally the finish in here is still about the same. These door armrests though are nice and squidgy, have really nice stitching along them, as does the stitching on all the seats in front and all this synthetic leather. It's really nicely made. There's no puckering. The trim on the seat is, again, the same as the front with this micro suede in the middle. They're reasonably comfortable, not as good as the front seats. I am sitting quite splay-legged here, but yeah, it's not uncomfortable. I'm just not probably as deep as I could be in some other cars, but the view is really good. Admittedly, the seat in front of me is lower than the passenger's one because that one doesn't have height adjustment, remember, but I have a fantastic view. I can see that beautiful dash from a distance, and I've got reasonably good footroom, just touching the underseat of the front, which is all the way down, and heaps of legroom here. Not too bad headroom, only probably about that much. There is no sunroof though available, so this anthracite full ceiling is kind of what you get, but it's all pretty good. This armrest just kind of flops onto the seat here. It's reasonably level with the door. It does have a pair of cup holders in it, one slightly bigger than the other. It's quite squishy and comfortable, not amazing, but not terrible either. We also have a pair of air vents here. We don't have any USB ports in the back, and we do have one mat pocket on the passenger seat, and that's about it. We do have door grabs here too, which everyone does, including the driver. The combined fuel consumption figure for the Civic VTi LX is 6.3 litres per 100 kilometres. However, we averaged 8.5 litres per 100 kilometres. The warranty is 5 years or unlimited kilometres, but also includes a 6-year rust and corrosion warranty. The servicing is every 12 months or 10,000 Ks, with every service capped at just $125, meaning that over 5 years and 50,000 Ks, this Honda Civic only costs $625 to service. Over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,066 to comprehensively insure a new Honda Civic. However, everybody's situation is different and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, your driving history, and whether you garage your car. Where the premium flavour of the new generation Civic really comes to the fore, in fact, most comes to the fore, is when you're behind the wheel, because this car drives so good. Like, given that it's actually sharing the platform with the previous generation Civic, which had a new platform in 2016, the Earth Dreams one, it's kind of surprising just how much better the new Civic is than that. It actually feels like it's 2 generations newer because it has so much more sophistication and finesse than the car it replaced. The previous Civic was a sharp handling car, but had very light and sharp steering and quite a sharp ride too, with a lot of road noise. And now it seems to have settled down and just become smoother, more sophisticated, with way more nuance in its handling balance and much better steering. Like either side of centre, there's this instant reactivity that it had before, but it also has proper weighting. This is sharp but feelsome and really high quality steering. But I think the better than that is the new Civic's handling. It does have the same suspension hardware as before, but something that Honda has done has made this really involving. Like the back end of this car, which is a multi-link independent, is constantly part of proceedings of the way that the Civic corners. And I feel like the more that you corner it, like the harder that you drive it, you could be in a constant radius corner, adding more and more steering, and you can feel the back end kind of slowly pivoting to make that nose go tighter and tighter. It's just really quite unexpected, and stunning, I suppose, even for a Civic. But that actually makes it one of the best driving cars in its class. I can't think of another hatch which is as fun as this Civic to drive, certainly in a warm hatch perspective, which gives it a really great basis for the forthcoming Type R, which is only a year away, and we can't wait for that. But what I think this car deserves is a manual gearbox. While the 1.5 turbo petrol has been honed to be quite nice, it's more powerful than before, 131 kilowatts, 240 Newton meters at 1700 to 4500 RPM, and that's strong. And the CVT does channel that well. And the CVT itself is actually quite a lot better than before. It really does mimic a torque converter automatic surprisingly well when you're hammering this car on twisty roads, which it loves doing. But it does not let you choose the gear that you want to be in. And above sort of 5,500 revs, it doesn't really sound that inspiring. And so what would be preferable is one of Honda's beautiful, slick 6-speed manuals to be able to select a higher gear and use all that torque and just sort of mask some of that graininess that it has at the top end that isn't quite on the same level of slickness as the dynamics. Now, the ride is also in that department. It doesn't ride as smoothly as the handling handles as well as it does, but it's a clear improvement over before, and it's not annoying. It's just a little bit hard to describe because sometimes there's a little bit of vertical movement and other times it's good. We've been waiting a long time for the Civic nameplate to really return to the form that it showed in the mid to late 80s. The last generation Civic that launched in 2016 was a big step towards making the Civic great again, but this 11th generation model really elevates that to a whole new level. This is a tremendously good car. It may not have all of those little elements of equipment that go, yep, that box ticks, that says 47,200 drive away, but the quality of its finish, the space that it offers, and the outstanding dynamics that it's certainly in its handling and steering that this car has really show that this is a fantastic driver's car again. It's so much better than the model it replaces, which was already so much better than the model that replaced. And so for $47,200 drive away, I kind of feel like this isn't that much overpriced. Sure, I wish it was $5,000 less, but then if you start to look at low model A classes, the base model BMW 1 Series, and potentially the new gen Audi A3 that's coming, although we haven't driven that yet, so I'm not going to comment about that car, but certainly the BMW and the Mercedes, the Honda drives rings around those cars. It does deserve to have a better engine than what it does, but this is all about setting the stage for the new Type R. As a warm hatch, this car is terrific. As a basis for what the new Type R could be, cannot wait for that car to launch. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, hit the notification bell and leave a comment on the 11th generation Honda Civic VTi LX or on Chasing Cars. Thanks for watching.